And there's something about going outside of your comfort zone, and I've done it time and time again. Those limiting voices, they want you to stay stuck. Not because they hate you, but because they love you. They want you to be safe. They want you to be comfortable. Going outside of what these little voices know is just a step too far. Sometimes you've really got to take ownership of yourself and force yourself out of the comfort zone. Hey girlfriend, welcome back to the Curl Power Podcast with me, your host, Zoe Fox. The Curl Power Podcast is for women that have really been through some stuff, have lacked confidence, maybe lacked direction, maybe lacked self-belief, but are now on the cusp of something great because inside is a little voice that tells you that you are worth more than what your current lot is. There's a little voice inside you that is trying to get your attention to tell you just how amazing you are. Yes. So through these episodes, we like to reframe thinking. We like to try and get an understanding into some of the unhelpful thinking patterns that are holding us back and blocking us from our greatness. I mean, I don't know about you, but I am ready to see just how good life can get. And I know that you deserve to discover just how good your life can get and how greater potential lives within inside of you. It's autumn, officially now. We're headed into the tail end of 2022. 2023 is on the horizon. And I certainly want to be stepping into it with more ease, more grace and more prosperity than I've experienced in any other year prior, and I'm going to be bringing you along with me. In these episodes, I bring to you my greatest lessons from my, around 16 years of personal development work. The work that I have put in has helped me to transform my life from being suicidal, depressed, suffering with PTSD, agoraphobia, generalised anxiety disorder, you name it, I've been there. But it came to a point where I was like, you know what? Life has to be worth more than this. And once I started to realise that I had a say over how my life experience went, and I started to play this game of life, I've been on a wild ride. For so many years, I felt totally powerless over my life experience. So to now be in control of how I'm experiencing life is so amazing that I'm absolutely determined to help as many women as I can to realise you can create the life you want and you deserve. I've been to the pits of hell and I've done it and I'm doing it and I'm going to be sharing it in this podcast. I know what it's like to have limiting beliefs. I have been held back by them for decades. Even now, even though I've made so much progress and I really am feeling like I'm loving life, I'm still recognising those old voices from back in the day that actually are not relevant to my life anymore, but they're still holding me back. So it's all about being conscious and mindful over your thoughts, your experience. And then with mindfulness, you can start implementing change to make sure that you are getting the best out of life. So from struggling with my mental health, I've gone on to heal myself, heal my mind, and go on to grab the things that I've always wanted to achieve. So once I started the process of healing my past, I went on to graduate with a counselling qualification from Birkbeck University of London. I managed to magnetise the man of my dreams and marry him, and I'm grabbing hold of him and never letting him go because he's amazing. I became a mum naturally after over 6 years of infertility and failed IVF. The greatest blessing of all, really, is just finding that inner peace and happiness. And when you've been on the edge with your mental health, you will understand just how important that is to have. In finding my inner peace and happiness, I went on to feature in a global diversity campaign for Barbie. It still amazes me that that happened. When I think back to little me that struggled with the lack of representation, looking at Barbie and idolising her with her fair skin and her long blonde hair and tiny little waist. I mean, yeah, it was actually quite damaging. So to then go full circle and to feature in a Barbie diversity campaign was crazy. And then for my daughter's first Barbie to be the Barbie that I had in that advertising campaign was just, yeah, it was very poetic. As well as featuring in the Barbie diversity campaign, I went on to co-found an award-winning digital marketing agency with my brother and business partner. With all the fun, the trials and tribulations that come from setting up an award-winning business, to then going on to start this podcast where I have the conversations that I needed really, when I was on my healing journey. And I know from the feedback that I'm having, these episodes are really resonating. I know that there are women out there that are taking a lot away from these podcasts, and it's helping them to change their lives. So if you've got that little voice inside of you that is telling you that your life is worth more than your current lot, or it's screaming at you to get outside of your comfort zone a bit, but you're struggling to listen, stick around. Check out some of the past episodes, and let's do this together. Let's consciously create the futures we want and deserve. Let's do it together. I am building up my network now of you amazing women that are all on this mission with me. So please come along and follow me on Instagram at zoe.e.fox, and let's do this together. So in the last episode of the Curl Power podcast, which went live last week, I was sharing an experience that I went through where I applied for something and I thought it was unsuccessful. So I was kind of dealing with the disappointment that came with that. And there's a little bit of stuff in there about following signs, listening to your intuition, and coping with disappointment. I also shared that the disappointment that I thought I was experiencing was short-lived because I was successful. It was just that it was a matter of timing. So go back and check out that episode if you haven't listened to it already. I'm a little bit disorganised today. What can I say? I've been climbing down off cloud 9 for the last few days. It was my birthday yesterday, and I just cannot believe that I'm stepping into this year that is leading me up to my 40th birthday next year, feeling the best I've ever felt in my life. I've never felt so in tune with myself, so connected with the universe, feeling like everything that I always wished could be possible is possible. There's something about stepping into age where you just start to lose a lot of the hang-ups of younger years, if I'm honest, in my experience. And I think in putting in this hardcore work into my personal development, what I'm seeing evolving in me, it's beautiful when I think about where I've been in the past. I can feel my throat getting tight now with emotion, because when I look back to how I was in my mid-20s, what a sorry, depressed place it was. It's really hard actually to think back at just how depressed I was and just how hopeless I felt. And here I am now, almost, I feel like I'm levitating on joy. And that's despite the fact that I'm living with a painful disability. In the last episode, I kind of hinted at something that I'd applied for, and I am ready to share. And if you are familiar with the world of spirituality and personal development, then I'm sure Hay House Publishing will be no stranger to you. Publishing books by the likes of Louise Hay, Gabby Bernstein, Kyle Gray, Deepak Chopra, Joe Dispenza, like the cream of the crop. The first Hay House book I ever had was given to me around 17 years ago, and it was Power Thoughts, a book of affirmations, positive affirmations, one for every day of the year, and it was written by Louise Hay, and Louise Hay is the founder of Hay House Publishing. These are books that have the potential to help you to change your life. Throughout my personal development journey, I've been on a bit of a budget, to say the least. So these amazing expensive courses were all out of my reach, and I used to be practically salivating at some of these courses, just thinking, oh, if only I could pay for this course. But I think where there's a will, there's a way, and if you're determined to make a change in your life, you can do it, regardless of how much money you've got in your pocket. And that's one of the things that I love about books, is just how accessible they are. Even if you're on a super tight budget, you can save for a couple of months and get yourself a book. And of course, we've got our wonderful libraries here in the UK. I don't know, do other places have libraries? I'm sure they do. I mean, I can only speak from what I know, where you're able to access books for free on loan. So books really do help you to make a change in your life if you're determined. And that's what I've always loved about Hay House as a publishing house. So it was perhaps a couple of months after my injury, my spinal cord injury. I've got a spinal cord injury if this is the first episode you're ever listening to. And I was lying in bed feeling pretty depressed and hopeless. I'd already been on my spiritual and personal development journey for a long time. I mean, my spiritual journey is something that has been at the front of my life ever since I was a kid. And I don't think that's anything that I've really gone into in too much detail. But when I was a kid, I used to have very interesting experiences, to say the least. I could feel energies, I could hear voices. It was quite intense. So I was quite scared as a kid by the things that I was feeling and experiencing. I'd hear ethereal voices. And if you're not into spirituality or any of this sort of stuff, then you're probably going to be thinking, yeah, right, or whatever. But when you know your truth, you know your truth. And this is my story. This is who I am. And I am who I am today because of all the things that have happened up until this point. So that was quite a big part of my life when I was a kid. I sort of pushed it away because it was quite intense to deal with as a child, having these unexplained experiences. And going through life, I've always had a real sense of knowing. My intuition has always been a real sort of guiding star. So yeah, my life has been punctuated with these experiences of a spiritual nature, which I might get into in more detail another day. But because of the fear that was conjured up from being a kid and feeling so scared of all this unexplained stuff that was happening, I sort of put a block on my gifts. It's funny because a couple of times when I've been for readings in the past, one of the mediums that I went to see, she was like, you've got a gift. And I was like, it's funny you say that because you're not the first person that has said that. She said, I'm so confident in your gift that if you go away and put the study in, I'll give you a job in my shop. And she had quite a prestigious store in central London, and she sort of does readings for celebrities and stuff like that. But I was so scared of what I might uncover that I didn't really put in that work. But it's been something that I've been slowly opening myself up to again. And what can I say? Life is crazy. Once you start to be open and once you have an inquiring mind, you'll be amazed what you can discover. I'm like, how deep do we get? Don't be calling people in white coats because if you're not on this flex. But yeah, I'm sure we can get into this in more detail. Anyway, I've got a voice, as I've mentioned, that pops up into my mind, shall we say, and leads me to places. It's the same voice that popped up in my head and said, do a pregnancy test, when I discovered I was pregnant after 6 years and 2 failed rounds of IVF. It's the same voice that whispered the word of, shall we call it, an angelic entity into my meditation. Anyway, I'm going around the houses a little bit. I did start off by saying, before I went off on a tangent, that shortly after my injury, I was lying in bed and I was sort of just feeling a little bit frustrated about a lack of representation in the world of personal development and spirituality. There's something about looking out into a world that reflects you that is mega empowering, right? And if you grow up as a person, a black or brown person, in this world, it can be a struggle when you don't see yourself reflected, when you don't see wisdom of people who look like you reflected, because it's like, what, don't we have any value to add? Or is it just that we don't have the opportunity to have our voices heard? So at this particular point of time, I was really doubling down into my development, my personal development, because I'm going through a real dark night of the soul with my physical injury. Adjusting to this newly disabled body, it was a lot. Ended up on the Hay House website, having a browse around, and I noticed that there was like a program for people who couldn't afford to attend their events, because at this point I was like, I'd really love to do this stuff, but I just can't afford to access any of these courses, any of these events. So I was having a little nose around the website, and that led me to another part of the website which was explaining all about their diverse wisdom program. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. It said there wasn't anything, it was closed, that particular program was closed at that time, and I certainly wasn't ready to be applying for it at that point. But I was like, amazing that they're doing this. I'm so glad that this exists, because we are so easily overlooked but so desperately needed. So that was that. I thought, not much more of it. Anyway, a couple of months back, I was going to bed. I try and meditate before I go to bed. In my meditation, there's this point after meditation and just before I'm going into sleep, there's like a transitional phase. And in this phase, I was just getting on repeat in my brain, Hay House published author, Hay House published author, Hay House published author. I'm like, okay, Hay House published author. Noted. Didn't think much more of it. Woke up in the morning and there was an email in my inbox about a Hay House Writers Weekend that was coming up. And I was like, oh, amazing. Had a little nose at it, knowing full well that I wasn't going to be able to make it there or whatever. It was just a little bit out of my league. There was this amazing event and I was like, oh, no way. Hay House have got a Writers Weekend on. And that voice in my head was shouting out Hay House published author last night. So I had a little look on the event page, just being nosy, scrolled down to see a little link about the Hay House Diverse Wisdom Programme. I was like, oh my God, it's that thing. I'm getting goosebumps. So I clicked on it and it was a website page talking about their Diverse Wisdom Initiative, which is trying to give a voice to more diverse knowledge and wisdom. And there was an application process where you could apply to be a part of this programme. And this programme essentially sees you being partnered with an established Hay House author for a period of 8 months to help you think about, how you would bring your message to the world and all of that sort of stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going for it. That voice was coming up in my head last night for a reason. So without any hesitation, as soon as I saw it, I was like, right, I'm getting onto it. Wrote up my application. And what I loved about this is just how certain I was and how there would have been so many times in the past that I'd seen an opportunity that was essentially lined up for me to go for it and overlooked it because of the limiting beliefs that were dwelling within me, the things that were saying to me that, oh, it's a great opportunity, but it's not for you, So I was like, yeah, wrote my application, submitted it very quickly. The deadline was due to be on my mum's birthday, and this goes back to the last episode now where you can hear all about that tense waiting period to hear whether I've been successful or not. So I went through my mum's birthday thinking that I've been unsuccessful, and I was like, oh man. Again, I said a lot of this in the last episode, so I won't go over too much again, but I was kind of gutted because I felt like it was I was being divinely led to this application. And then when it didn't work out, I was like, oh, okay, so I'm just deluding myself about this little voice in my head that leads me onto the most amazing places. And then if you listen to last week's episode, you'll know that I had an email. It wasn't when I was expecting to receive the email, but it told me ultimately that I had been successful and had been given a place on this programme, which was just like, my gosh. Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps all over now as I'm saying it. So the kick-off to this programme started off in Edinburgh last weekend. So not only was I going to this most amazing event that I could only have dreamed about attending previously, I was like being invited there as part of this programme. And it was also another huge thing for me because it was my first time going anywhere on my own since my injury. So it was quite a big move for me. I really had to dig deep. It brought up a lot of anxiety. It brought up a lot of vulnerability for me because I've either got my husband close by my side or my parents, my brother close by my side when we're out to support me. So it was a big thing, but I was like, this is an opportunity. There's no way in hell that I'm turning this down. I'm going to push outside my comfort zone and I'm going for it despite the fear. And when I say fear, like I was properly scared. I was like sobbing the day before on the bed, holding on to my husband. I love you. Thank you for always making me feel so safe. It really highlighted my vulnerability. But what was interesting for me this time round was that it was a vulnerability around my physical ability rather than my mental health, where going back in time, my mental health was my vulnerability for such a long period of time. So it was really interesting for me to push outside of my comfort zone. But one thing that really helped is knowing that there's stuff such as passenger assistance. So I was getting the train from London up to Edinburgh, and there's a thing called passenger assistance. So if you've got a disability, they can help you. So my husband took me into the station. We had passenger assistance booked, which means they're able to help me with a wheelchair, because I can't be on my own managing my wheelchair. I find it really difficult. So I was able to use the station wheelchair to help me get to the train, because this is the sort of thing, because I can't walk that far at the moment, the prospect of having to do all this walking around was like, it was quite intimidating. So it was great. I got a lot of support. They carried my bags on, put my bags onto the train, received me at the other end, and then I was able to get a cab door to door. So it was a real step for me, a real huge step for me, moving into a new part of living life post a life-changing injury. So I got to my hotel, and I don't know why I packed 50 books. I don't know how much time I thought I was going to have on my hands. But yeah, went for a little meal for one at a very nearby restaurant, which was amazing. And it was just a real step in independence. And there's something about going outside of your comfort zone, and I've done it time and time again. Those limiting voices, they want you to stay stuck. Not because they hate you, but because they love you. They want you to be safe. They want you to be comfortable. Going outside of what these little voices know is just a step too far. Sometimes you've really got to take ownership of yourself and force yourself out of the comfort zone to get into this new arena. And when you go into this new arena, there's a whole new land of possibilities and people waiting to meet you. So I rolled up at this writers' weekend on a Saturday. I couldn't believe it. Here I am at a Hay House event. Talk about dreams come true, let alone the fact that I've been invited there as part of this programme. It was just like, oh my gosh, I am still on such a high from the weekend. It was such a great learning experience. I got to meet a bunch of other amazing people who are also on the Diverse Wisdom programme. I think there were 12 of us out of over 60 applications. So we've got this newfound collective now, and that in its own is worth the whole thing for me, is meeting these amazing people. So big shout out to my Diverse Wisdom programme friends. I know some of you are now listeners of this podcast, so big love to you. And going beyond the people in the programme, there were just a lot of super cool people in the room. I think, there's something that all brought us to that space, something about us having gone through our own challenges, learn from them, and now wanting to use what we've learned to help other people. Hence this podcast. This is the whole reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I want to be the voice that I needed when I was going through my dark night of the soul, the voice that was lacking. I want to be that for somebody else who was going through their challenges. If somebody is going through a real rough time and they can maybe listen to one of these episodes of the podcast and think, you know what, I can do this, then I've said it before, but that's my purpose, is just if I can help one person think differently, that then helps them to change how they experience life in a more beautiful way, then I really do feel like that's what my sole purpose is. There's no other reason why I would have gone through so many traumas in my life if it wasn't for me to have taken my biggest lessons and then to be able to use that to help to serve the greatest good. So I made a lot of beautiful connections. And so I'm starting this next exciting part of my journey now as an official Hay House mentee. Like, guys, this for me is the stuff that dreams are made of, and I can feel my voice is going to crack again because, as I've said before, when I go back to some of my darkest, lowest points, the one in particular that comes to mind is when I was standing on the edge of the platform at the tube station. I was working in banking, doing very unfulfilling work. I was like a square peg in a round hole in a emotionally and financially abusive relationship that was really just cracking apart anything left that I had. And this was all while I still hadn't even healed from the fact that I had a boyfriend that died very suddenly in front of me. I was a broken human. So to be where I am now, in joy, in purpose, just feeling so grateful, it feels like a true blessing. But I've put in the work, and I want you to know that it's possible to transform your experience, but you have to put in the work. It's time to stop making excuses. It's time to stop playing small. It's time to stop not wanting to be seen. It is time to stand into all your glory, because you're here for a reason. If you're listening to this podcast, I believe you're listening to this podcast for a reason, because there's a greatness inside you that is waiting to be born. And I want to help you give birth to the greatest possible version of yourself. So, I mean, this podcast has just been a little bit of a waffle. I didn't come in with any sort of bullet points or anything. It was just to express my heart and how I'm feeling at this moment in time. And I just want you to know that if there's something that you want to go for, there's something in your heart that you want to achieve, but there's things that are holding you back from achieving it, I want you to start believing that it's a possibility. Once you start believing it's a possibility, the universe is going to open up to support you to achieve it. You've just got to start believing in yourself. So I know I like to usually end these episodes with a point for reflection or an activity that you can do to just bring a little bit more mindfulness or consciousness to your thought process. One of the things that I would love you to do today is, again, it's another journal prompt, is sit down with your pen and paper and just have a little think about what you would do if there were no limits. What would you achieve if there weren't anything in your way? Be as unlimited as you possibly can. If back when I was standing on that platform of the tube station considering the end of my life, if someone would have told me, hang tight, in a few years' time you are going to be an official mentee with Hay House Publishing, I wouldn't have believed it. At that point of time, I didn't have anything to give. So what I'm just trying to say to you is that where you are now isn't going to be where you're going to stay if you start putting the work in to turn it around. And you can do it. This is not some crazy science. It's about creating these daily habits that you can put into place to bring more mindfulness, more awareness into your life. And with more awareness, you can really start to consciously create the life that you truly deserve. On that note, I have created a free PDF. It's downloadable. It's on the website. It's called the Manifest Your Perfect Day Planner. Now, this is the daily habits that I do just to help me keep in tune with myself. And I think daily reflection is a really key part of personal development. So you can download that off the website and it will help you just to reflect at the end of every day and to start to consciously create the next day ahead. I am truly in this game of life to see just how good it can get. And I want to lead from the front. If you guys are somewhere like perhaps where I was maybe 10, 15 years ago, I want you to know that change is possible. Buckle up, sis. I'm going on this ride and I'm bringing you with me. I hope you're ready to start creating the future that you truly deserve, because trust me, you deserve it. If that little voice is living inside you that tells you that you're worth more than your current lot, start to believe it. The future is yours to create. So, girlfriend, thank you for being on this journey with me as I consciously create my best possible life and you start to do the same with yours. If you enjoyed this episode, or if you know anybody that needs a little reminder that change is possible, please share it with them. This podcast is growing and it's all word of mouth. It's women hearing the message and thinking, you know what, I've got a sister, I've got a friend, I've got a cousin or whatever that needs to get on this too. So let's all do this together. Honestly, can you imagine what an empowered future we're going to have once we all start putting in the work to just truly see what's possible? I just want to shine as an example to you as to what can be possible when you put your mind to it. Right, girlfriend, don't forget to come and follow me on the socials. It's zoe.e.fox on Instagram. If you enjoyed the episode, it would really mean the world to me if you could give me a rating and a review. You can do that on Apple and Spotify. It just helps then for other women who are coming along. Maybe they're a little bit confused about the title. Perhaps I need to work on a rebrand. But just your reviews help them to see what you're getting out of the podcast and helps them to make a decision as to whether it's worth them listening. And I think it is. Of course, I'm going to be biased. But your reviews really mean the world. So thank you. If you are looking to work on a one-to-one basis to see just how good your life can get, perhaps you want your voice to be heard and there's something inside you that's saying create a podcast. Perhaps you've got a brand that you want to bring to life. Perhaps it's just the more personal development work and you want to figure out how you can create more peace and joy in your life regardless of your circumstances. If any of that sounds like you, this is my forte. This is where I'm strong. So please do get in touch through the website and book a call and we can have a little chat to see how I might be able to help you to get to your next level. Right then, my sister, big love and blessings, and shout out to the brothers too because I know you're there. Have a wonderful week ahead. May all the blessings rain down on you that you deserve. Big love, peace out, and I'll catch you next week.